All right, so now I'm going to put you to work. This is exercise 2. I want you to pick out an activity from this morning's unit. And one, identify the modes and modality. So everybody understand the mode is interpersonal, intrapersonal, presentational. Modality, speaking, reading, writing, I missed one, listening. And then whether it's at the intermediate level, above or below. And the intermediate level guidelines are there for you. All right. Now, there are 6 activities, so I'm going to divide you up into 6 groups. And here's what I'm going to do. Do you use flexible grouping in your class? Very important, right? This is one common way to group people. You're sitting together, fine. I could have also grouped you by proficiency, right? Remember we talked about how to bring up the level of an activity or bring it down, so you can create different activities at different levels and group students accordingly, right? But now I'm grouping by student choice. How many of you have an interest in doing Todos hablamos de diferente maneras? How many want to do actividad 1? Want to work with actividad 1? Okay, so I'm going to put the actividad 1 people over here. Ok, yo creo que ya estamos listos. Entonces, por favor, les voy a pedir que vayan a la actividad 1 para que recuerden de qué se trataba la actividad. Y entonces recuerden que lo que vamos a ver es mode, interpersonal, interpretive, presentational, modalities, reading, writing, whatever. And whether it's at the intermediate, and justify it, kind of explain how you came to this conclusion, okay? Adelante con ustedes. Okay, so you said interpretive, and where's the interpretive aspect of it? Okay, and you said interpersonal too? Everybody agree with that? Okay. Good. And then level, what do you think? So reading? Oh, I see. So the reading, if it were individually done, okay, it would be an advanced. Actually, this is that brings up a good point. These are short sentences. Why is this an advanced level of reading? What makes it difficult? Very good. But let's read sentence 4 for a second. I agree with everything you said. Let's read sentence 4. Los linajes solos hay en el mundo, como decía una abuela mía, que son el tener y el no tener, right? What are you being asked to do? What is the activity involved? For instance, I could give you the sentence and say, write a reaction. Do you agree or disagree? Is that what's being asked of you? What are you asking students to do? Or what was Claudia asking you guys to do? To match. The language is hard. You have to have background information. You kind of have to recognize that that's Old Spanish. Right? But notice the task, so the text is hard, the task is easy, right? So have you ever heard the statement, modify the task, not the text? Have you ever heard that statement? What does that mean? Cambien la actividad. ¿Por qué no cambiar el texto? ¿Qué problemas presenta cambiar el texto? Muchas veces no, bueno, muchas veces sí. Muy cierto. Pero además de eso, hay gente que le gusta trabajar, ¿no? Vamos a olvidarnos de esa gente. ¿Qué problemas presenta? Yo no soy una de ellas. ¿Qué problemas presenta eso de adaptar el texto? ¿Comprenden a lo que me refiero cuando digo adaptar el texto? Bueno, no que no lo pueda, pero no se debe cambiar, ¿verdad? ¿Qué pasa? Y es solamente porque es de mal gusto cambiar un material auténtico. ¿Qué pasa si cambiamos un material auténtico? ¿Tienen alguna idea de lo que puede pasar? Ok, no solo que no es auténtico, bien. Pero hay otro problema más, señores. That when they put ESL learners in ESL, often ESL classes give you modified text. And the modified texts are simplified, so they have little sentences. If you're only getting input to individual sentences, what level are you stuck at? Intermediate low, right? Remember, to kick it up, you got to start putting sentences together, right? So when you start modifying the text to bring it down a level, you're denying the learner of access to the higher levels, right? Because you got to be exposed to the higher levels in order to learn how to copy that way of speaking. Great question. How do you make an authentic resource comprehensible? Let's start out with the activity can you guys answer it on the basis of the activity you worked on? Did you understand the question? So it has to be comprehensible to the task, right? In this case, it's comprehensible to the task. Is it comprehensible? Is it accessible to the task? For actividad 1, todos hablamos de diferente manera. Do you see what I'm asking? Is this sentence accessible for the task that you're performing? Right. So that's what I mean by modify the task. They don't have to understand everything in this sentence. They might be able to pick up an abuela, it sounds like abuela, and that, it sounds que son el tener y el no tener, which sounds kind of formal. Okay, but the task here is matching, right? And you can go by a process of elimination. If this is the hardest one, you wait until the end to do this one. Okay, so to your question, this text is comprehensible relative to the task. Now, if you had to write, maybe we won't be writing argumentative essays anymore, but if you wanted to give an opinion of something, this text would not be comprehensible to that task. What would you need to do to this text? You have to scaffold it a lot, right? And Claudia, in other places, gives us examples of scaffolding. So there was one, what did I do with it? Where she asked us to look up the word Spanglish in the dictionary. That's on page 3. So using the dictionary, of course, is one way to scaffolding. Giving back, what other information? You guys know a lot more about this than me. What other information could you use? Let's say you wanted them to work with that sentence. What would you need to do? Give me the task, and then tell me what you would need to do to make the text accessible given the task that you have in mind. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, so this is a matching task. What else could you do? We already said write a reaction piece. Give an opinion, and an opinion could be I agree, I disagree. If you add the Y, then it becomes harder, right? But if you say agree, disagree, that's already it's a hard text, easy task, right? Modern text. Maybe you can rewrite it into English. Maybe you can find an English equivalent, an authentic English equivalent, right? El tener y el no tener sounds like they have and the have-nots. Shakespeare. Think about the 5 C's. When you bring in Shakespeare into the classroom, connections, comparisons, right? So notice this is another reason why you want to relate what you're doing in the Spanish classroom to the other things that are going on in the school setting. Good. Okay, so now I want to go back to what Teresa said. Okay, so you want people at different levels. This is level 1. If you wanted to differentiate instruction, right? Can you use the same text and come up, suppose my learners are at different levels. Can you have them do different things with the same text? You can answer in Spanish or you can answer in English, right? What else can you do? Talking about it, did you say? Yes. In an informal task, right? Those are all very easy tasks, right? They might be at what level? Do you think intermediate or below? It could be pretty low, right? If you help them, right? Tener, no tener, right? Okay, so let's move to ahorita. ¿Cuál era el grupo? Ahorita, ustedes. Okay, so let's talk about the modes and the modalities. Acuérdense que es avanzado, pero vamos a hablar para la actividad de escucha y está la actividad de discusión, ¿verdad? Y cuando hay un video, estamos en el interpretativo, ¿verdad? El modo interpretativo que es más difícil, right? Y además de eso, la muchacha, si mal no recuerdo, hablaba muy rápido, ¿verdad? No daba explicaciones muy claras, ¿verdad? Estaba hablando para qué tipo de persona que escuchaba. Un native speaker, que es una actividad auténtica que usa un nivel coloquial, del lenguaje, va a ser muy difícil, ¿verdad? Porque es interpretive y por el ritmo en que ella se expresó, exactamente el ritmo de hablar, ¿verdad? Exactamente, para nosotros yo lo escuché 2 veces antes de, claro. You're right, that's a very advanced video. Did you like the video though?
It was good.
It was a great video. So what do? Do you give up on that video? So let's talk, not yet, but let's talk about what we can do. If we really like the video, we ought to be able to figure out something, maybe. Let's see. Pero interrumpí, alguien iba a hablar. Pero no había, el nivel me dijeron para las 2 cosas, para las 2 actividades avanzado. ¿Y por qué para la actividad de discusión lo consideraron un nivel avanzado? Por las justificaciones que había que dar, ¿verdad? Y fíjense que es algo más abstracto, ¿verdad? Recuerden que al nivel intermedio pueden hablar de qué cosas. Y el yo, exacto, ¿verdad? El yo, ¿verdad? Pueden hablar de sí mismos, ¿verdad? All right. Vamos a la pregunta. Entonces, ¿están listos? ¿Ya dieron todo, presentaron todo lo que iban a hacer? Ok. Vamos ahora a la pregunta que planteé. ¿Qué se puede hacer? Si nos gusta este video, y está buenísimo, la verdad. Si nos gusta este video, ¿por qué o cómo podemos usarlo? ¿Qué podemos hacer para usar este video? Brainstorm, lluvia de ideas con el vocabulario. ¿Qué aspecto del uso de la palabra ahorita que cambia de significado según a quién la usa o el lugar de donde proviene la persona que la usa? ¿Verdad? También, porque eso es interpersonal. ¿Verdad? Que el nivel interpersonal lo que promueve negotiation of meaning, ¿verdad? Y es así que van a aprender. That is a role play, like one pretend, at the end there's a review. Yes, that's very good. Oh, like if there are 2 students that get it, they can demonstrate it in front of the class. Seguro. Muy bien, muy bien. Los cognados ayuda muchísimo también, es cierto. Es cierto. Okay. Sometimes the YouTube videos, I don't know about this one, have captions. You could use captions. That's fine with me, right? Okay, ahí está el video. Video. That's a text. You don't want to modify it, you want to scaffold it. What task? Okay, so now remember, also when you think task, you want to think about level, modality, modes. What kind of task do you want to do with a video like that? Or can you do for your students? So the first step we've seen is, can you get them to understand? And understanding is at many different levels, but at a basic level, what she's talking about. What can you ask them to do with a video like that? Can you think of anything? Act it out? Yes, act out the fight scene, for example. That might be kind of fun. I don't know. Exactly, right. So role play? Good. How difficult, how much language does that require? It requires a lot, but notice the language is in the video, right? Remember, at the intermediate level, you can grab language that's out there and adapt it a little bit and make it your own. So you can hear what she said to him. Can't remember, oye, pero me dijiste que me ibas a llamar ahorita y me quedé sentada esperando tu llamada. You know, so you can copy that language, and that's what intermediate learners do. Well, what could an advanced, keeping the same idea of role play, what could an advanced, now advanced you have to create, you're no longer borrowing what's there, but you're creating something. What could you ask an advanced level learner to do? Exactly, in the future, how would that be? How would they avoid? Excellent, right? Now notice, that is a hypothetical. So that requires a lot of language, but it's a great, if your students are at an advanced level, or even if they're at an intermediate high, you want to kick it up a notch. So that's good. Do it, un guión, hacer un guión. Oh, pero eso es mucho trabajo. ¿A ti te gusta trabajar?
No.
Pero no, dijimos que no íbamos a hablar con la gente que le gusta trabajar. No.
Si ellos trabajan en grupos se ayudan.
Bueno, that's very interesting. Okay, listen, this is excellent. I believe in letting them do the work. So you could say, you're gonna transcribe the first 30 seconds, you get second 30 seconds, etc. It's an excellent activity. Anything else you want to add? No, you guys are great. Mitos del lenguaje, no me acuerdo cuál de los dos quisieron hacer, pero sé que uno de los dos solo. ¿Quién fue quien hizo paso? ¿Hubo un grupo? ¿Ustedes no? ¿Quién tuvo grupo 5? Ah, no, entonces paso 2. Entonces, si se fijan en la actividad, ahí es esta la actividad, ¿verdad? El paso 2 es, ¿qué es lo que tienen que hacer en el paso 2? ¿Válido o no? So what level would you say? Quite low, right? Listening is, or not listening, reading is maybe intermediate, but in terms of reacting, it's not even, there's no language, right? There's yes, no. ¿Sí? Entonces es un nivel bastante bajo. All right, so the task of yes, no could be a first task because it's at a very low level. But you don't want to stay there, right? Why is it that you don't want to stay there, by the way? It's a good first task because you always kind of warm, you know, if you exercise, you do the little Mickey Mouse stuff at first, and then the going gets tough, and that's where I get going. But you want to start with the Mickey Mouse stuff, right? All right, so then, but why don't you want to stay at that lower level? Claro, no aprende nada, exactamente. By the way, to learn, you got to be pushed. It's got to hurt. It's like exercise. If it doesn't hurt, it's not doing you much good, right? Okay, so let's kick it up. Let's kick it up. Now, ¿cuál es la actividad al paso 3? Vamos a suponer que el artículo está tal y como lo vimos nosotros, en inglés. Is that a good activity? Read the article in English? Okay, tell me why. I agree, it's a good activity, but convince me. It's creating connections, right? And comparing languages too. You're doing English, using English to learn to process something in Spanish. So it might be a very good activity. Read it in English, and then what would you do with this activity? The original paso dos, no sé por qué, paso dos. So you would use the article, which you read in English, you know, to validate or invalidate each of these statements. Okay, good. We're still, okay, that's very good. If your students are not that advanced, notice it's a very good activity. Intellectually, right? It's a great activity. It's an interesting one too, right? Right, okay. But maybe your students are more advanced. Maybe your students are ready to do something harder. What can you have them do? Ooh. Okay, what can you have them do? Dime. Oh, you've got second language learners. Oh, that's a very good point, actually. Let's talk about that too. Right. That's another layer of difficulty, right? The ahorita video is going to be much harder. You guys are ahorita, right? It's going to be much harder for second language learner. That means you have to scaffold it more, right? Okay, so what can you do in addition to using the article in English, which is a good activity, but it's not, from the point of view of producing something, it's not that demanding. Can you bring up the level? If you want to. I'm not saying you necessarily want to. But what can you do to bring up the level? You would have them produce something novel that would exemplify the myth, and it would be produced in Spanish. Beautiful. Very good activity. Okay. Excellent. What else? Can you do some field work? Field work is really good with heritage language learners. So you can go out in the community and gather some of these ideas and try to classify them. Wouldn't that be a great activity? That's an interview, right? That's an interview. So we saw interview can be done at many levels. Can you give me kind of a lower level at which you can do an interview? Do you remember the interview from 20 minutes ago? Okay. Entonces recuerden que interview somebody for a project or a publication that was fairly low. Interview someone about his or professional, advanced, low, etc. So where would you say if you go around collecting things like this from the community, what level or which one does it align with? ¿Cuál? La primera, ¿verdad? O primero, ¿verdad? Que está bastante bajo, ¿verdad? Y una cosa que pueden hacer es de antemano crear las preguntas. ¿Verdad? Entonces, de antemano decidir cómo se van a hacer estas preguntas y como las respuestas están bastante limitadas, no resulta tan difícil. ¿Verdad? Okay. Entonces, pueden recolectar toda una serie de creencias en la comunidad y qué hacer con esas creencias. Okay. El acto, por cierto, de hablar, ¿verdad? That's negotiation of meaning. Quizás escribirlo. Right? Good activity. What else can you do with that? Un gráfico, ¿cómo? Explíqueme cómo, ¿a qué te refieres? X número de personas dieron este tipo de mito. Muy bien. Right? You guys understand? It's like mito 1, había que 10 mitos, no me acuerdo. Entonces el mito 2 fue el más común. Ese tipo de cosas. Muy interesante. Ok, vamos con el grupo que era el video de la Real Academia y todo esto. Bastante, por lo menos, sí. Entonces, el escuchar y poder entender de qué se trata, ¿verdad? Okay, you know what I'm going to ask you, how to adapt it, right? Pero fíjense, la actividad 8, que es un debate. What do you think? ¿Qué piensan de esa actividad? It's a good activity, but why am I going but? It requires a very high level, right? So let's kind of try to keep the same idea because it's a great idea to react to this. What can you keep the same idea? How can you keep the same idea but sort of make it more accessible? So we can do this. This is an activity for us to do, right? But let's say you're learners. What can you do? How can you simulate some of the elements of a debate without actually engaging in a debate that's that hard? Piensa que si cambian el tema, a lo mejor se hace más fácil debatir algo que les interese a ellos. Con el debate también se recomienda muchas veces que, aún con esos temas que ustedes, con eso que han mencionado, esas sugerencias tan buenas, que se les dé el vocabulario que van a necesitar para debatir, ¿no? No estoy de acuerdo con esto porque, y entonces they fill in the blank, ¿verdad? Me parece injusto porque lo que he visto es por un lado, por el otro, so that facilitates, right? Okay, but suppose we want to keep the content, sort of a general content. Is there anything you can think of that you can do? They can react to it in English. That's right. They can react to it in English. Very good. Okay. So closed tests are actually very good from the point of view of testing. They're a good way of getting at levels because obviously the more advanced you are, the better you are at figuring out what should go in there. But what's the problem with closed? So that they serve a very good function in that way. But what's the problem with, what's the downside? Does anybody know what I mean by closed tests? Where you have a passage, you take out a word, you leave a blank, and then the student has to fill in. There are different ways of doing it. You know, you can take out every 3 or 4 words, and then it becomes very difficult. You can take out words that they don't know, and it becomes even hard. You know, there are different ways of doing closed tests, and they've been shown to be very good at predicting or at measuring proficiency. We've all used closed tests, right? What's the problem? But there is a problem. There's a downside. It doesn't mean you won't want to use it, but you have to be aware of the downside. What's the problem with closed tests? There are 2 ways of doing closed, right? Where you accept something that makes sense, or only what's in the original, and there you kind of have to give them a bunch of words that they have to choose from, right? Otherwise, you're right. And grading becomes very difficult in that kind of situation. Right. All of a sudden, the focus becomes on the forms and not the communication, right? That's the downside. Now, you want your students to be focusing on form occasionally because that's been shown to be very valuable. But now it's something that they're called forms, not form, which refers to this. Focusing on form, it means today we're going to do the predicate and the imperfect. Let's all practice the predicate and the imperfect. Focusing on forms means today we're going to talk about the history of the Spanish language. And in order to talk about the history of Spanish language, I'm going to have to use the past tense, right? So those are the forms that are appropriate to the higher communicative task, right? It's the second one that you want to do, right? So you want to have a communicative task and then derive the language forms from the task that you're asking your students to engage in, right? Okay, so back to my question. You've got this video, it's hard. Let's say we figured out how to scaffold it. That's a big if. But let's say we figure out how to scaffold it, and we can talk about how to. Some of you came up with really good ideas for scaffolding. Now, I've asked you to come up with a debate-like thing. A debate might be very difficult, unless you give them the questions ahead of time, something like that, right? But can you kind of simulate something where there's a back and forth? Okay, there's an activity, reduce the text. Do you ever do that? I told you not to change the text. Remember I said change the task, not the text. But you can have students manipulate the text. You don't want to do it because you want students to working with authentic texts, but you can have them, what did you say, reduce it, right? So they can take this very short video and compress it, right? It's kind of writing a summary, but it's different from writing a summary because you're taking, remember at the intermediate level, what can you do? You can reach in there and take somebody's language, right? And reconfigure it a little bit so they can go back to the video and take out sentences and form a reduced version of what's being said there. Do you guys see what I'm saying? You know, the thing is, sometimes if things are more reduced, they're harder to understand because you're taking away the repetition in a language, right? So maybe you want to give them something that's very redundant and have them reduce, pick out the elements, right? So these are all kinds of things that you need to keep in mind, right? Now, you can simplify the task. You can make up a statement, okay? This video is saying that it's good to buy these glasses, okay? So you make up this statement. It was glasses, right? Yeah, okay. Then you say true or false and show me where you found that information. Now they have to go back. Now they kind of have the statement already, and they have to find where they find language and also the acting that supports or falsifies that statement, right? Notice it's an advanced level from the point of view of listening, but not so advanced from the point of view of producing. So copying can be okay if you make it harder, right? Like condensing it, right? Then copying becomes a much harder task and a very useful task from the point of view of picking out the elements of a text that are essential, taking out non-essential. So this is an activity I do a lot with my students. You know, I give them a full newspaper article, and then I say, now you're going to bring it down to 150 words. And they have to negotiate what those words are. Right? Now, notice my students, as I said, they're intermediate mid, intermediate high. At the intermediate level, they're still taking somebody else's language. So that's why that's a good activity. They're copying and they're modifying the language that they're getting. It's also good from the point of view of reading ability because you're trying to pick out the essential elements, right? Yeah? So the slogan might be something like buy Spanish or something, like buy American, you hear this, buy Spanish, something like that. And then they would debate whether or not that should happen. Yeah. So, okay, that's a very high level, and it's a very interesting. Typically, the higher the level, the more interesting, right? So that's the desirable aspect of that activity. What's the downside of that activity? It requires a lot of background knowledge, a lot of linguistic knowledge, because you've got to debate, right? So if you're going to do that activity, you might want to do it because it's interesting. You've got to scaffold it. You've got to give them a lot of time to research the topic, prepare the language ahead of time, etc. The Startalk principles start at the bottom of page 4. And Principles for Effective Pedagogy starts on page 6. These will be very familiar to you. I just want to unpack these principles that you saw in Claudia's teaching, best practices that you saw Claudia do. Right. There were many best practices illustrated. So look at it from the perspective of you as a student, but knowing with the teacher's hat, knowing what the best practices were, using that checklist, the 2 checklists. Take out 1 or 2 things, best practices that you observed. Be very specific when you point to it, okay? This is Startalk endorsed principles. Actually, I may have given you the URL in your handout. What is great about this site is that you can find a lot of examples. They exemplify these principles, okay? So this is very useful. Also, you can look at the website and find, they have a lot of resources. So they have grants. Now, there's nothing for Spanish, but if you wanted to study Portuguese, for example, you might find a grant that you would be interested, a summer program, etc. Okay? Some of your students want to study Portuguese. They have summer study for high school students. So if you wanted them to study, if some of them were interested in Portuguese, and college students too, there's a lot of resources here, not for Spanish specifically, but resources that may be helpful. All right, so let me go back to the PowerPoint. ¿Qué prácticas vieron que corresponden a las mejores prácticas de la enseñanza? Right? So what did you see? What best practices, but use the Startalk and effective language pedagogy that you saw? Okay, in what way was it a learner-centered classroom? Did you like that from the point of view of a student? Yeah, right? So on page 5 is the second one, the second point, the second bullet point. Grammar is not the focus of the course, unit, or lesson. Grammar is a tool for communication, avoiding meaningless rote drills and ensuring that all practice requires attention to meaning. Right? So grammar is studied in the context of communication, doing something real. And there was a clear theme running through the whole thing, right? Why is it good to organize a unit around a theme? Can you imagine why that might be a desirable thing? ¿Verdad? Entonces, cuando mantenemos el mismo tema, podemos reciclar la materia, pero ya a un nivel más avanzado. Y cada vez que volvemos al mismo tema, vamos subiendo el nivel. Fíjense que la última actividad, que era ese video tan difícil, llega al final, ¿verdad? La primera actividad era muy simple. Remember the matching? Very simple, and it builds up, right? Which is exactly what you want to do. Pero al llegar ya a la última actividad, los estudiantes han hablado mucho, han visto mucho el vocabulario, han tenido la oportunidad de practicar mucho, entonces están preparados, quizás, depende del nivel, ¿verdad?, para hacer esas actividades tan difíciles al final. Lots of authentic materials, right? Okay. Think in terms of the ACTFL standards and how this relates to the whole thing. Look at number 3. Point number 3 of the Startalk principles. Integrating culture, content, and language. Look at that second point. Content-related instruction that makes meaningful connections to the world. Did that lesson make meaningful connections to the world of a learner? Absolutely. Right. Okay. Anything else? What about from effective pedagogy? Did you get a chance to look at them? Did you see joint productive activity? Most of the time you were working in groups, right? So notice that what is the second point? It speaks to something that was said earlier. Language and literacy development. Developing language and literacy across the curriculum. We talked about that in the morning. In what context? Remember you being in, I think it was mostly elementary school, but it may be a middle school too. You're being asked to teach language across the curriculum, right? So that's also an effective pedagogy. What about contextualization, making meaning, connecting to students' lives? So notice she says, no, new information is presented in an abstract, disconnected manner. Yes, the teacher integrates the new activity, academic concepts with students' prior knowledge from home, school, or community to connect everyday and schooled concepts. Did you see any of that going on? What about number 4, challenging activities, teaching through complex thinking? No, activities rely on repetition, recall, or duplication to produce factual or procedural information. Yes, the teacher designs and enacts challenging activities with clear standards, expectations, and performance feedback, and assists the development of more complex thinking. Did you engage in complex thinking? Remember we talk about language and functions. Then you want to talk about things that are cognitively difficult, right? So notice doing the connection in the first activity where you had to connect the language to who probably said it. It was not linguistically difficult. You just had to kind of capture a little bit of it because it was just a limited choice, right? It might have been, but then there's a question, is it cognitively difficult to do? Me voy a matar. Vamos a ver. Yo no me he quedado sin tiempo, no vamos a poder hacer esto porque quiero hacer una última actividad a modo de resumir. Pero si hubiéramos tenido tiempo, lo que iba a hacer es otra vez separarlos en grupo, según el nivel de experiencia que tienen, porque hay diferentes actividades, hay diferentes niveles de dificultad en estas actividades, ¿verdad? Entonces, lo que iba a demostrar es otra manera de formar grupos, según la experiencia, las habilidades, etc. Pero fíjense, el vocabulario que he puesto en rojo, create, evaluate, analyze, create. Does anybody know what that is? That should seem familiar to many of you. Bloom's taxonomy, right? ¿Verdad? Esa taxonomía, ¿verdad? Lo que vemos es que hay diferentes niveles de complejidad de entendimiento, ¿verdad? Entonces, fíjense que cuando estamos tratando que un estudiante nos dé los datos de una lectura, ¿cómo se llama fulaní? El papá. ¿Dónde vive la familia? Eso está al nivel de recordar, es algo muy básico. Pero fíjense que ahora estoy hablando de algo diferente de lo que es el lenguaje. Esto se puede relacionar con el lenguaje, pero no siempre tiene que ver con el lenguaje, ¿verdad? Es un poco nivel de razonamiento, entender, aplicar, analizar, evaluar, crear. Entonces, lo más arriba, el nivel más difícil de la pirámide, más alto de la pirámide, requiere que se cree algo, ¿verdad? Analizar puede ser, ¿es correcto esto o no? ¿Verdad? O en lo de los mitos, la lectura de los mitos, donde en la lectura encontraron algo que contradice el mito. Ahí estamos analizando o aplicando también, depende de cómo se haga, ¿verdad? Pero esa es otra cosa que tienen que tener en cuenta cuando diseñen una actividad. Que aparte de lo que es el lenguaje, aparte de lo que son las modalidades, todo el nivel, todo lo que hemos visto, tienen que tomar en consideración que cuando se le pide a alguien que cree algo, se le está pidiendo mucho más que si le pedimos que aplique algo. Right? So that's another complication. We won't worry about I'll just plant that little seed. You probably know it already. I just want to remind you of that. Y lo que quiero hacer en esta última actividad es, ustedes han visto mucho hoy, pero además de eso, ustedes, por la experiencia que tienen muchas ideas también, ¿verdad? Entonces les voy a pedir que trabajen en grupos y que pensando en la experiencia que tienen, lo que han visto, lo que han leído, etcétera, hagan una lista de best practices, ¿ok? Que añadan algo a esta lista que les he dado con los Startalk Principles and Effective Pedagogy, y no tiene que ser, pueden añadir un punto o dos, algo que han observado, y puede ser específico al nivel en que ustedes enseñan. A eso me refiero, así escuela primaria, secundaria, college, etcétera, ¿verdad? Pero fíjense que en esta actividad, y esta es la actividad más difícil de todas, en el sentido que les estoy pidiendo que integren todo lo que está aquí y añadan algo, ¿verdad? Antes de añadir, tienen que integrar, fijarse en lo que está ahí, y entonces crear algo nuevo. En este caso no es tanto crear como pensar en algo que no está ahí, pero que ustedes han usado, que conocen y que funciona muy bien. ¿Comprenden lo que les estoy pidiendo que hagan? So you want to add, I want you to add something to this list. But I want you to use your personal experience, now making a connection, right? So look at what's there, and if there's something that you've tried and you think is really good, add it to your list, and then we're going to go down the groups and see what you come up with. So let's hear some of your best tips. Okay? So do you have a tip for creating agency? Eso es un ejemplo de diferenciación, ¿verdad? El estudiante elige lo que le interesa y entonces lo presenta. There you're talking presentational mode. Perfecto. Muy bien. Y entonces también lo que me parece que estoy escuchando es que ustedes hacen que el estudiante haga la función de maestro, ¿verdad? Entonces se desarrolle como docente. Primeramente, vieron que lo especializaron, lo adaptaron a la situación del nivel secundario, ¿verdad? Que es parte de lo que hay que hacer aquí. Cada cual está a un nivel diferente, situaciones diferentes, entonces adaptar lo que estamos viendo o añadir algo que responda a la situación específica en que cada uno de nosotros nos encontramos. Eso es lo primero que vi. Y lo segundo que vi es algo que se aplica a todos los niveles, extender esa relación o lo que hacemos por el estudiante más allá del aula, ¿verdad? Yo tengo un colega que es buenísimo en ese sentido, Alejandro Lee. Le enseña en college, pero lo que hace es que siempre está buscando grants para sus estudiantes o actividades para sus estudiantes, recomendándoles que hagan diferentes cosas. Entonces va más allá de lo que se hace en el aula. Yo sé, todos estamos muy ocupados, entonces no vamos a poder hacer todo esto, ¿no? Pero si acaso podemos hacer una de las tantas magníficas sugerencias que oímos, perfecto. So having students, become a community is really important. I don't know if this happens to you, but I'm frequently surprised how at the end of 2 or 3 months, they don't know the names of the people that are sitting just a few rows from them, right? So yeah, getting them to know each other and to understand that they are part of the process of learning, that it's not just the teacher's responsibility and it's not the one-on-one relationship between the teacher and the student. Perfecto. Fíjense que el aula de español, la clase de español es un lugar ideal, es un contexto ideal para hacer eso, porque es la conexión entre el estudiante, la escuela y la comunidad, los padres, ¿verdad? Y pensando en eso, pueden crear proyectos. Uno de los best practices es authentic products that have real world value, ¿verdad? Pueden crear proyectos en español, usando los recursos que existen en la escuela en inglés, crear proyectos en clase para traducir o crear productos en español para los padres y la comunidad. Eso es fantástico. Exactamente, entonces en Back to School Night pueden servir de intérpretes, ¿verdad? Pueden preparar algunos, no sé cómo se hacen, hace muchos años que no voy a Back to School Night, pero lo que se produzca en inglés se puede también producir en español. La clase se puede enfocar en hacer eso y es un producto verdadero e importante, de valor en la vida real. Do you know anything about free voluntary reading in the school? Okay, when you have time, look up Stephen Krashen, with a K, Krashen. He recommends that you give your students 15 minutes every single day to read whatever they want to read. And he described, look him up on YouTube. He's also written very short articles that are easy if you don't want to get into the difficult stuff. But how effective that is from the point of view of language learning. It doesn't, it seems like, and I actually I want to relate that to the advice I wanted to give you, which also relates to what you said, that, the older I get, the more I feel like I don't have to control everything, right? And the more I learn that sometimes, these things that seem kind of loose, I'm a little bit uncomfortable sometimes with the loose things, but these loose things work. Right? So the free reading, read what he has to say. Listen to him. He's a great speaker. The free reading, it pays huge dividends. Here's another thing he figured out. If you do this during your career, at the time when you retire, he says it means you had 4 months of paid vacation. So there's another reason to do it. No, but he talks about the enormous advantages. There's a lot of research that shows that, but I like the paid vacation. There's a lot of research that supports that. But it's got to be voluntary. They choose whatever they want to read because they have to be drawn to it. They have to be enjoying it, right? And then one thing I've tried is project-based learning. And I started out being very skeptical about project-based because, again, it involves the students working on their own. It's not the traditional student-centered classroom. And I was not convinced at the beginning. I started doing it, let me be honest, because I was getting older and feeling tired. And I thought, I just can't do all those hours standing up in front of the classroom. I'm going to let them do the work. And now I am really, completely buying. It works. So sometimes, I guess my biggest tip, everybody has given tips. My biggest tips is just give up some control. As long as they're using the target language, they're going to get a lot, and just because you think you've taught something, they're not necessarily going to learn it, right? So even when you have control, you're not getting everything that you think you're going to get out of it. So try losing a little bit of control, giving it over to the students, and you might be very pleasantly surprised. Okay, great ideas from all of you. Thank you. Okay. So, I guess we're done.
These are some questions, and what I'm going to do is I'd like you to write them down. So, okay, the first question is, what is a lesson or a principle that I learned today? One thing. What's a lesson, a takeaway, a lesson or a principle, a larger idea that I learned today? And it could be a tip, a teaching tip, a technique, an idea, a principle, a larger principle. And how did that make you feel? This is the therapeutic part of it. So were you overwhelmed by this new idea? Is it too big for you to, is it exciting? Just what's your emotional response to that? The next one is, what did you have validated today? Something that you thought you knew, your belief, and you left feeling validated. Is there an idea or an understanding that was confirmed for you today? And now the biggie, the last one, which is, and now what? So this is when every workshop is, and what are you going to do about this? So another way of saying this is, how might you apply some of these new things? And this is really something for you to chew on for a long time, but some of you may already have ideas. So looking forward to your classes starting up in the fall. And now what?